Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to how Air Force pilots fly the controversial A10 Warthog. Now, I didn't know that the A10 Warthog was a controversial plane. I thought it was a long-standing, reliable, dependable aircraft that is used to kind of like, basically try and neutralize enemy ground forces before, the US sends their troops in. Like, why is the A10 Warthog controversial? Like, obviously it's going to be explained in this video, but I can't think of a reason why, because it doesn't seem like it's an expensive plane. Like, it says here it's $19 million. I'm guessing that's per unit, which when you compare it to something like the F-35, which is something like 150 million, we're talking about an almost 90% cost saving. So if it's cheap and it's reliable, how can it be controversial? But yeah, it's going to be a fun video. I love these sorts of stuff. You guys know me by now. Anything military, hardware related, software related, whatever it is, I'm a fan of, I'm interested in. So it's going to be a fun video. Let's do it.
This
that noise
is the A10 and Thunderbolt II, more commonly known as the Warthog. The Air Force uses the A10 for close air support, missions that require the plane to fly low to provide cover and assist ground troops in battle.
So our whole mission,
the weapon at the front, man, there's that sound. It's like a laser almost.
in life and our whole job in life is to take care of the men and women on the ground. It's the only thing we think about, it's the only thing we train to, it's the only thing we talk about, and it's exactly what this airplane is built to do.
But these pilots may be among the last to be trained to fly it.
Really? Why? Why though?
For years, the Air Force has considered retiring the A-10 in favor of the newer F-35 fighter jet. And that might finally be happening with Congress approving the Air Force's plan to...
The Air Force is finally getting rid of the A-10s and its focus may be straying from the Warthog's unique mission. Okay, I mean, the thing is, I think the F-35 program has cost like $1 trillion or something like that. So I guess you do have to put them to use at some point to kind of get value for money. But can't they be used in tandem? I don't see why you have to retire the A-10 unless you really have enough F-35s that they can satisfy all the demand required.
To phase out the A-10 over the next 5 to 6 years. But the public debate over the need for the A-10 continues. While some A-10s are as much as 50 years old, F-35s cost about $60 million more per aircraft and weren't built solely to support ground troops.
There may be a day that...
Okay, so it's a lot cheaper than I thought. I thought it was like 150 million a unit. But I know there's different variations. There's the F-35A, B, and C, I think. And I think some of them are a bit more expensive.
I am called to potentially help save someone's life when they're having the worst day of their life. That comes back to my training and making sure that I know what I'm doing in the jet.
So how vital is the A-10? And could the Air Force soon be without one of its most iconic warplanes?
So the only base that A-10 pilots train at is at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
Before they fly the A-10, pilots train in the T-38 Talon during their initial flight training in Texas.
They fly completely different based on their flight performance and characteristics.
The T-38 is kind of like a sports car. It's quick, it's agile, it's fast. But the A-10 drives more like a Cadillac.
After graduating from flight training, new pilots move to their assigned posts.
Really liked the mission of the A-10 and thought it was super cool. I like the idea that it doesn't matter what I'm doing, that I'm strictly there for people on the ground.
If you look at it,
That thing is so menacing. I wonder what the circumference is. If it's like that, it's probably bigger, right? Could be like that, right?
the most attractive looking plane, if you will. It's pretty ugly. It doesn't have the swept-back wings. It's got, big Hershey bar wings on it for like added stability. So it's just a mean looking airplane, and that's ultimately like what a Warthog is.
What sound does the A10 make when it fires?
You know, like bird, bird, bird.
And that's actually just the noise of the bullets exiting the barrel.
This is the Gal-8 Avenger. It's a 30.
Wow, it's a lot bigger than I thought. So it's not really like that. It's more like, because if his hand is only taking up like 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, his whole hand, so it's got to be like that. It's a big old gun.
30mm Gatling gun. It's built by General Electric, and this is the largest Gatling gun ever built and put into an airplane. So it's got it's 7 barrels. It shoots at a maximum rate about 3,900 rounds a minute. There's almost no target that the Gal-8 is not a valid weapon to use against. As we go around, the titanium bathtub is one of the features designed specifically to protect the pilot in the airplane. So this whole panel right here, where you see these giant Phillips head looking fasteners, that whole panel is titanium. So you can hear all these are hollow aluminum, and that's rock solid titanium right there. This was one of the first fighter types that incorporated that into the design of the airplane, and it's the only one I know about that has a full bathtub encompassing the pilot. Behind this panel right here, this is our single point refueling system right here, so pull that cap off and fill the airplane up with fuel. We have 4 fuel tanks for a total of about 11,000 pounds of gas. If I'm topped off, I can fly for about 3 hours. And then once you add in aerial refueling, we can fly pretty much indefinitely. And then as you're looking towards the back of the airplane, you can see we have a lot of hard points, a lot of weapon stations on the airplane. There's 11 in total. And between those, we can carry up to 16,000 pounds of ordnance on those 11 weapon stations. This is a Mark 82 bomb body, so a 500-pound bomb body.
I would imagine that a 3-hour potential, airtime is probably a lot lower than what the F-35 is capable of. I know it has air-to-air refueling, which obviously, like he just said, extends its time in the air, but 3 hours doesn't seem like a lot, especially if you have to fly quite a distance to get to where the plane needs to be and get it back.
Just a blast and fragmentation type weapon that you drop it, it's unguided on impact, and it detonates. This is a GBU-31. It's a 2,000-pound bomb with a GPS guidance kit on the back of it. So it's a coordinate-seeking weapon, meaning I can input a GPS coordinate, and that's exactly where that weapon's going to go.
But how does the A10 stack up to the F-35 meant to replace it?
Probably not that great.
Supporters of the F-35 say it has a huge stealth advantage, but detractors say it doesn't have the durability the A10 does thanks to features like the titanium bathtub. Another concern is how F-35 pilots are trained. Insider reported that according to a 2022 training memo, no F-35 pilots are required to execute close air support training simulations in 2023 or 2024.
But why? Why though?
For A10 pilots, close air support is at the center of their training, which starts here in a virtual reality simulator lab.
So they're going to start off in the VR lab, and that's going to give them the sight pictures and the references on the ground and the references in the aircraft for the first time.
How can you expect the F-35 to replace the A10 if one of the critical mission, operations the pilots aren't even trained for in the F-35? It doesn't really sound like a recipe for success here, does it?
Put that up. Hear the ECU kicking on.
So simulators are extremely important. They're able to practice everything in a safe environment with, professional instructors before they get out and actually fly them on their own.
Students familiarize themselves with the A10's control panels and starting procedures before moving on to the flight simulator.
We're going to open our air-to-air refueling door at this point.
He was doing aerial refueling. It's a mission that the students actually perform in the aircraft pretty early in their training pipeline. Historically, without this lesson, it's usually taken about 10 to 15 minutes of talking to the students through getting the successful hookup in flight. Whereas now that we're able to have them practice with this lesson, they go out on that first flight having already done it before.
We want to take a look at our airspeed as we're in formation with the tanker.
Now the feedback we're getting from instructors is that they're just going right up to the boom and they're getting their hookup on their first try.
For the VR sim, you're getting the muscle memory. So the first time we practiced it in the jet, We know physically what we're doing with our hands, and we know where our eyes should be, where we should gauge, and then our IPs are helping us fine-tune those things.
And it's good, when you do the VR training and you do it quite early on, like they said, it's had time to like really sink into the brain, and like, you know, like when you do something early and often, it really gets in your brain and in the long-term memory banks.
After spending a month in the simulator and learning the basic operations of the aircraft, pilots begin flying training missions in the A10. Captain Lindsay "Mad" Johnson has 5 years of experience flying the A10. Today, she's training for a new role to be a pilot on an A10 demo team, where she will highlight the capabilities of the Warthog.
I am about 2 hours shy of 1,200 hours in the A10 itself. They call it like a crawl, walk, run process. So I did it in the sim multiple times. Then we go out to the airspace for my first time with a floor, not actual floor, but a simulated floor of 5,000 feet AGL. And then I go here, 2,000 feet AGL, 1,000 feet AGL.
I see.
And then 500 feet AGL until I got through my first certification.
Lower and lower and lower.
After Johnson completed a few rolls and dives, she moved on to simulating a strafe, which is an attack on enemy ground forces, a technique used in close air support operations.
So when we do close air support, we are egressing, as they say it, from in front of the target area. I'm going out about 2.5 miles away at about 500 feet, and then I'm turning back around this way. And as I'm about just outside of a mile, I'll pop to about 30 degrees nose high, which allows me to get high enough to be able to see there is what would be designated as the friendlies and what would be designated as the enemy on the ground. And then as I visually acquire that out over my canopy rail, I'm then rolling in using both ailerons. My throttles are already in max. I'm rolling in, and then I'm putting basically my nose position down on what we consider to be like a 20-degree wire. So rather than flying straight and level, I'm 20 degrees nose low towards the ground.
I love all the language, like all the acronyms and the lingo that she's been using just so casually. Like, it's quite cool hearing pilots talk.
I learned about the A10 growing up. I knew I wanted to do something kind of to pay homage to my dad's time in service. I was young when September 11th happened. I was 9, and he deployed 2 months after September 11th happened. That kind of stuck with me, and I knew I wanted to do something that was going to give back to my country as well.
It just so far seems to me, I don't know about you guys, that the A10 and the F-35 are just different planes for different purposes. Like, it just doesn't seem like we've not seen anything that shows that the F-35 can do close support. Can it?
The A-10 debuted in combat in 1977, making it just shy of 50 years old, which is one reason many want it to be retired.
Understood.
For years, the Warthog has been the subject of debate between the U.S. Air Force and Congress.
But if
Some
it works,
members of Air Force leadership have suggested retiring the A-10 to focus on developing more modern aircraft, like the $80 million F-35.
But if it works, this just seems to me like lobbying from the companies, the manufacturers, because they know that if they can get the A-10 phased out, they'll need to build more F-35s, which means more contracts, more money in their pocket. Because if the plane is clearly still efficient, why is there such a push to retire it? Unless it's showing visible signs of age and, inability to deal with modern warfare, why do you need to retire the plane?
Why would you want to retire the least expensive, most accurate close air support system?
Absolutely.
I don't want to retire it, Senator, but the Air Force has to get bigger to do all this.
But Congress has fought those requests due to the success of the A-10 in recent conflicts with ISIS and the Taliban, and the plane's overall cost efficiency.
It's tried and true. It's very rudimentary with the systems that it has, but why fix something that's not broke?
Right.
It's been in every conflict that the United States has been in since Bosnia, Grenada, pretty much every contingent that the United States has been a part of. The A-10 has been pretty much the leader of all that.
Why do you need
Last
to retire
year,
it?
Congress approved an Air Force proposal to retire 21 A-10s, reducing the total fleet to 260, with plans to decommission the remaining planes in the next 5 to 6 years.
Seems like a waste of money.
People don't realize how much maintenance actually goes into keeping these aircraft airworthy. You know, it's not like a car, you know. When we wake up in the morning, we jump in the car, start it, and drive, right? These have starting issues, they have leaks, they're 40, 50 years old. They all have somewhere between 13,000 to 15,000 flight hours on them, and that exceeds the actual life expectancy of the airframe by, 5,000, 7,000 hours.
A-10 critics may use the plane's maintenance issues to fuel their argument, but the cost of maintaining the F-35 jumped 15% between 2018 and 2020.
It's just, there's no argument here. From a logical point of view, this makes no sense unless it's financial reasons. Why would you retire a plane that's super cheap and effective? Even if it's old, if it's still effective, why would you retire it in favor of a plane that, yeah, it looks nicer, it's probably much more advanced technologically, but it's super expensive and in every way? Like, I just don't get it. It's lobbying from the money men.
Once we all finish, we'll go to the different assigned bases, so I'll be going to Korea next. It's just fun to fly. It does a job that no one else does, and you're good at that. That is your thing. That's the A10's thing.
After completing the 6-month training program at Davis-Monthan, newly certified A-10 pilots will begin their careers as fighter pilots in the U.S. Air Force.
The plane was built well before I was alive, and knowing just like the generations of people that flew the plane before me were looking at the exact same gauges that I'm looking at. So it's a pretty unique experience. I knew as like a younger child that I wanted to fly the A10. My grandpa was in the Army. He has seen the A10 like when he was in the Army do things, and so that was even more just like a further drive to pursue the airplane.
While everybody knows us for the gun and its capabilities, a thing that we take most pride in as an A10 community is protecting the lives of the men and women that are on the ground.
Fantastic video. For me, like this, the reasons why that were explained for the push to retire the plane, to me, tell me of a greater problem within possibly the spending of the military budget. I just don't understand the logic of why you would want to retire a plane that still works and is cheap. To me, it doesn't bode well for how spending is justified. Like, just in favor, like let's stop using the older plane for no actual military-based reasons, like actual warfare type reasons, just because it's old, in favor of a much more expensive plane to both build and maintain, just to justify spending. Like, it's not good, like, because, out of that $1 trillion military budget, is it being spent in the most efficient way? Like, based on the logic shown, for the reasons why they want to retire the A10, I'm willing to bet that a lot of that money is probably just spent on things that probably doesn't need to be spent. Like, just upgrading stuff that is clearly still working fine, just because you want to, almost just because you want to spend it. Like, I understand that, at the same time, you want to appear like you have an edge over enemies, like if the enemy knows that you're still using a 50-year-old plane, it may not, it doesn't look good, I guess, maybe. But if that 50-year-old plane is still striking fear into the hearts of the enemy, I see no reason why the A10 and F-35 can't be used in conjunction, especially because the pilots of the F-35 aren't trained in close air support. To me, that's a massive hole, like the A10 can specialize in that and the F-35 can do all of the other stuff. Like, let me know what you guys think here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.